I'm going to start by just saying a few things about the economy and priorities ahead, and then we'll have a conversation. So I want to look past this political moment a little bit and just start by telling you our sense, give you my sense of where the economy is now and what the main challenges ahead and what should we be doing about those basic challenges. The economy is definitely healing. We're making some progress in repairing the damage caused by the crisis, but it's still a very tough economy. You can see in housing, if you were in the construction industry, if you're a small bank in some parts of the country, you're a small business trying to get credit, it's still very hard. And the scars of this crisis were very damaging in terms of people's basic confidence. You see across the country today, people still uncertain about how strong will the economy be going forward, and is Washington up to the challenges facing the country. But we are growing. We've now been growing for more than a year and a half. We're a little more than a year. Private sector job growth started in this recovery earlier than it did in the past two recoveries. So people are gradually putting people back to work. Private investment, which is in some ways one of the most fundamental measures of strength we have for an economy coming out of crisis, has been really quite strong. Grew at a rate greater than 20% at an annual rate in the first half of the year. Slowed a little bit since then, but still, we think, growing roughly 10%. Exports have been quite strong. Manufacturing, industrial production came back really quite strong in the early stage of the crisis. And you are seeing the U.S. economy go through the difficult but very necessary changes to heal the damage caused by a crisis like this. Households had a negative savings rate. They were spending more than they were earning before the crisis. But private savings now are significantly higher, something in the range of 4 to 6% of income, which is a very important, encouraging development. People are bringing down their debt burdens as a share of income. And that has this character of making the economy feel weaker than it actually is, but that weakness masks things that are encouraging about growth in the future. Because financial crises are caused fundamentally by people living beyond their means, by an excess buildup of debt. And to come out of a crisis like that, you have to go through this process of reducing leverage in the financial system and people going back to the point where living within their means. And we're going through that process now. And I believe most of the adjustment we face as a country in real estate, in the financial sector, is largely behind us now. And I think that's reassuring and comforting. The question, though, is what can we do to make growth stronger, bring down the unemployment rate more rapidly, and improve the odds that we're coming out of this crisis stronger, not weaker in the future. And I want to just list what we believe are the most important things the government should be doing next. By far and away, the most important challenge is to find ways to make sure that we are strengthening economic growth in the near term. That's the best way to make sure we get jobs back more quickly, unemployment rate comes down, people become more confident in their economic future. And the most important thing the government can do that is to strengthen the incentives for businesses to invest here at home. The President outlined in September two very important initiatives that will help go in that direction. One is to give businesses for 1 year, the chance to write off against their taxes investments they make in new capital equipment. So this very generous expensing program is one way to get businesses to put more money to work more quickly for a temporary period of time. And he combined that proposal with a proposal to make more simple and substantially more generous and permanent a tax credit for companies that invest in research and development in this country. So again, he proposed to simplify, expand, and make permanent one of the most important things government can do to encourage investment here in the United States. Now, alongside those incentives for private investment, he proposed that we start a very substantial multi-year program of investments in public infrastructure, in our transportation infrastructure. That is important not just because if you look at the quality of infrastructure across the country, you can see that we're suffering from decades of underinvestment and relative neglect. You can see that just in the fact that we look like we're falling behind the basic quality of infrastructure many countries face. But investing in public infrastructure, we think, has one of the highest returns on the use of a dollar of taxpayers' resources. It's good for long-term growth, too, and it's very good at helping people get back to work who have been hurt most by the crisis in construction, in manufacturing. These are relatively good jobs. They pay relatively well. And again, we're not a country with unlimited resources. We have to make choices about how we use those resources. And we want to make sure we're investing those resources in things that will help raise our long-term growth prospects. Alongside those measures, we want to work to make sure we're expanding exports, doing more to open foreign markets, and we want to be tougher and smarter in terms of how we do that. Most of the growth in the world is going to come outside the United States. We are uniquely good as a country still at making quite efficiently things that the world needs. And we want to make sure that we are a substantial part of that growing demand for rising standards of living you're seeing in China, India, Brazil, emerging markets in Asia, Latin America, around the world. But to do that, we have to not just do a better job of being tough against things that are unfair to U.S. companies, but we've got to make sure we're prepared to engage with other countries in opening up their markets, opening up new trade agreements that expand opportunities for American workers. Now, what Congress has to do when they come back from the election is to extend the tax cuts that are now in place that go to 98% of working Americans and to 98% of small businesses. Very important we do that, and we'd like to do it as quickly as possible so people don't live with any uncertainty of what's going to happen to their tax rates going forward. And our hope is that we can use that imperative, meaning the imperative that Congress has to legislate an extension of those tax cuts, to see if we can add to that important policy act some additional incentives like the ones I described to strengthen public investment, private investment in this country. Now, it is very important that people understand that we're going to have to start to make more progress bringing down our long-term deficits. We started with, before the crisis, an unsustainable long-term fiscal position. Part of what I think eats away at confidence in America today is a concern about whether Washington is going to be able to find the political will to restore gravity, restore a sense of discipline, restore a sense of responsibility to those long-term fiscal deficits. And even though overwhelmingly now our challenge is about growth and job creation, it's important that as we do things that are helpful to near-term growth, we do so in a way that's going to be responsible fiscally and, again, give people more sense of what we're going to do to bring down those deficits over time. The President has started that process by proposing a very tough freeze on non-security discretionary spending to make sure the government is not growing over time in areas where it shouldn't. He's joined with Secretary Gates to propose some very substantial reforms to how the Pentagon spends money so we can save more as a country in one of the most expensive things the government does. And he has proposed some carefully designed, modest tax changes to, again, demonstrate to people in the United States and around the world that we're prepared to start to take steps to go back to where we're living within our means. But he's just started that process. He formed a bipartisan fiscal commission that's supposed to recommend additional reforms on December 1st. And our hope is those recommendations will help us start to build some political consensus in the United States and Washington for a set of longer-term reforms as we recover, as the economy recovers, to bring down those long-term deficits. I think that I want to just end on an optimistic note, because if you look at the country today and you look at how damaging the crisis is, how deep the scars of the crisis went, I think it's important to note and to recognize that we are a remarkably strong and resilient country. You look across the American business community today, you see world-class companies operating at the frontier of innovation, incredibly strong and productive, with very substantial financial resources they can put to work. And we have more work to do, and we want to keep at it, repairing the damage caused by the crisis, but our challenges are much more modest than those that face any of the other major economies. And I'm very confident if we can keep finding ways to get people to come together in Washington and act on these long-term challenges we face, that we're going to come through this crisis stronger than when we started.